All right, welcome everyone to BRITE Connections, a webinar. This is the first webinar we've done in about 4 years, and I'm really excited to bring it to you. So hi, my name is Mitch. I use he, him pronouns, and I will be your host for this evening's webinar, and I will be giving a presentation. We have a really cool evening in store for you. It's going to go from now until about 7 p.m., so we'll have all of you out of here in time for dinner. Now, I represent BRITE. For those of you who don't know what BRITE is, BRITE stands for Building Resilience and Inclusion Through Engagement. And we are a Ventura County nonprofit that is focused on raising the voices of young people, getting them engaged in advocacy through art and media, and doing social change theater as well as a variety of different presentations and events all around Ventura County. So let's take a look here at our agenda. All right. After a bit of housekeeping while we let everyone come in here, we'll start our BRITE presentation. So this is going to be a presentation about our brain. This presentation is called Developing Brain Resilience. Not only is it about how we develop our own brain resilience, but it's also about how we develop the developing brain, right, growing up, and building resilience for that specifically. We'll talk about how the brain works, how substances affect us, and about how to build healthy brain behaviors. After that, we're going to have a panel discussion and Q&A. We have a really cool lineup of panelists for you today. We have some youth advocates, we have prevention experts, and community allies. And I know them all. They're really great and wonderful people, so you're in for a good conversation. And then at the end, since it is Suicide Prevention Month, there will be a suicide prevention message featuring Sade Champagne, who's going to be sharing some of her own stories and the power of community. And then finally, at the end, there'll be some resources for you, time to get into any last Q&A questions, and then more where you can find out about BRITE. And all throughout the presentation, you'll see at the bottom that there is a Q&A button. So you can press that Q&A button, and it will add a question for us, and we'll be able to go through them and answer them later on in the presentation. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, our brain and why it matters. Everyone has a brain. Sometimes it might not feel like it, but we all have brains. They're all in there. And our brains are really, really important to the way that our body is functioning. Arguably the most important. But it is kind of like the brain saying that the brain is the most important. A little funny there. So let's talk about these parts of our brain. Now this is a bit more of an abstract. Our brain is really complex, and there are so many parts of our brain, and we're still learning about it all the time. So this is more of a rough outline on how our brain works. But we've got all these parts of our brain, right? We have our cerebellum back here in the back of our head, and our cerebellum is all about our coordination, right? Our coordination and making sure that our movement is working great and our body is connected to all of our muscles and our bones. That's what our cerebellum is doing. We've also got the temporal lobe, which is right there underneath there. Our temporal lobe, that is responsible for things like our memory. It's responsible for things like our perceptions and controlling that. And then a really important one, the biggest part of our brain right here in the front, is the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe also has our cerebral cortex, right? This is a really important part of our brain that is dealing with our emotions. It's dealing with our personality, our sense of being. Now, our brain is really, really cool, so I encourage you, look up all these different parts of the brain because there's a bunch of stuff that it does, and this is a really short, quick on how that works. But this will give us a good foundation for talking about how our brain develops and how substances affect it. So stages of brain development here. Prenatal, that is before we are born. The brain is just starting to develop its functions. Actually, at conception, and onward into a few months, our brain is super itty bitty tiny. It's just a couple cells, and it starts to develop more and more and more and more until finally birth. We come out as a newborn baby, and our brain is right there at the beginning. As a newborn, our brain starts to grow rapidly. In that newborn, in just a couple years there, our brain actually grows up to 80% of the size that it ever will be. So super big growth there in the brain. And once that brain starts to get into that bigger, more steady position from being a newborn, when we are realizing all of our senses, realizing that we can taste things, realizing that we can touch things, we go into childhood. Now in childhood, we start our synapse formation. Synapses, you can think of them kind of like little pathways in our brain. The synapse formation, the more that we have, it's connecting memories and connecting parts of our brain so that when we feel something or when we learn something, our brain is able to use that synapse path to recall that information. So that's when synapse formation really starts to happen and we start to develop ourselves. Now, adolescence. This is really key, and we're going to be talking mostly about the adolescent brain today. That's around ages 10 to 25, and that's when the connection really begins to deepen. All these synapses start to form really closely, and it's the foundation for what our brain is going to be into our adulthood, right? This is that very base level where our synapses are solidifying. And then as we go into adulthood, that formation starts to slow. Our brain doesn't grow very much anymore. Our synapses don't form as quickly, and we're slower at adapting. So adolescence is a really key part in not only our brain development, but also our development as a person. So let's talk about it, the adolescent brain. Now, I believe that most of you watching either are adolescents or once were adolescents. So you know absolutely how wild it is to have a brain when you're in adolescence. So that prefrontal cortex in our frontal lobe, that is developing. So our personality, our judgment, our ability to plan ahead starts to form. Emotionally, societally, this is really important. It's actually a really amazing time for our brains because we are starting to see who we are, who we can be, and developing those skills. But it's important to know that even if it feels really important and really impactful and so solid and so good, our brain in adolescence is still under construction. We are still developing our brain in adolescence. So let's talk about decision making and impulse control at this time. While our brain is in that developmental part of adolescence, our reward center and our emotions are very, very active. So this is a critical time for developing those skills and developing those habits. And anyone who has an adolescent in their life, I'm sure you can see absolutely the emotions can get very, very active. And that's in part because of this important chemical. Now, there are a lot of different chemicals and hormones that will affect our body in different ways, but dopamine is a big one. This is the reward chemical. So when we do something that our brain thinks was a success, it gives us that chemical and we feel good. If we got an A on a test, dopamine. But also, if we make our friends laugh, dopamine. Adolescent brains actually make more of it and make it more often. So as adolescents, we get almost completely reliant on this dopamine and start to do things that maybe aren't in our best interest that is seeking that dopamine. So that dopamine in this period is really great for learning skills, sports, art, problem solving. It makes it really, really fun to do those things, but it can also lead to more risky decisions. Risky decisions while our brain is in that vulnerable developing state. So let's talk about substance use and the brain. While we're adolescents, everything we put in our brain is more impactful. Now that can be a good thing, but that can also be a dangerous thing. So let's talk about alcohol. In the United States, alcohol is illegal for anyone under the ages of 21. Now that's not random. The reason is because that developmental period ends right around that 21 to 25 period. So the lawmakers, and scientists, they say that the best time if someone is going to drink is after the brain has developed. Now alcohol is actually a depressant, which doesn't mean that it makes you depressed, but it does mean that it starts to slow down the brain. And abuse of alcohol is actually one of the most common substance abuse disorders. So our central nervous system, our cerebral cortex, all that starts to slow down. Our brain's functioning, our body's functioning, all slows down. Also, alcohol in the brain blocks memory formation. You may have heard about blacking out. Now, that's not a random thing. That happens because the part of our brain that we were talking about before that is developing our memories is inhibited, so we're not able to form those memories. It also harms that brain functioning for balance and our judgment, and that tipsy feeling is because the body is not able to do the things it normally does because it's been broken down and inhibited. Now, binge drinking is especially dangerous. These effects happen in small amounts, but if someone is drinking a lot, it compounds. Also, if someone's brain is still developing, those impacts and harms are more substantial. So 27.9 million people in the United States have alcohol use disorder. And risk of developing alcohol use disorder is actually increased if the drinking starts in adolescence because the brain is still developing. So that is one substance and how it affects our brain. How about another one? Marijuana is another popular substance, also known as cannabis, and it's the chemical THC. THC stands for delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, but that's really long, so we tend to shorten it down to THC. So that chemical latches onto our brain's receptors and causes them to activate over and over and over again, which makes the brain act in really funny and funky ways. And can be really dangerous because it's not functioning in a way that it's normal and that is used to. That's what makes someone feel high. Now, marijuana use can impact short-term memory, our focus, and our motivation, right? Those parts of our brain that are dealing with that start to slow down. Also, it's been linked with changes in the brain structure in the temporal lobe. There is this part of our brain specifically for memory called the hippocampus. The hippocampus has been shown to be damaged by marijuana use, especially in its brain development. Also, in teens, it can heighten anxiety, depression, and other mental health disorders. And you can learn more about that at cannabisfactcheck.org. Now, here's a big one. Tobacco and vaping. Now, this is really important to talk about because it is becoming more and more popular for young people in middle school and high school. We see every year that there are students that are using these products and becoming addicted to tobacco or to vaping. And that is in large part because of nicotine. These products have a ton of nicotine, which is one of the most addictive drugs that we know about. And there's a lot of health problems that have been linked to tobacco and to vaping. We know about lung cancers and different cancers of the body and various things that it can impact the body. But the brain is actually one of the most important effects that this nicotine has. It can cause trouble concentrating, can cause difficulty sleeping, and it can, in younger people, delay that frontal lobe development. Now, many people have addictions to tobacco or to vaping, and they might not see the effects of these right away, and we're actually not entirely sure because vaping has only been around for the last 20-ish years and have only really been popular in the last 5 to 10 years. So we may see in the future some pretty dramatic research come out about how vaping is affecting the body. But we know already how nicotine affects the body and how nicotine can prime the brain for addiction to substances in the future. So if someone's already addicted to nicotine, the next chemical that comes in, it can use that neurological pathway, go through those synapses, and form an addiction quicker. All right. So let's talk now about developing brain resilience. We're going to talk about this before we jump into the panel. So what is resilience? Resilience means the ability to stand strong and recover from hard times. So resilient doesn't mean never dealing with hard times. It doesn't mean always being perfect. It means the ability to stand strong even when there are hard times. Now, every time we make a healthy choice for ourselves and we keep going, our brains are being resilient. Our brains are kind of like a muscle, so we grow through things that challenge us, and we are able to learn, adapt, and recover. Just because we made a mistake once doesn't mean we can't be resilient and be strong later. I'm going to go over protective factors really quick. There are some ways that we can protect our brain during its development and long after. An important thing is to have supportive relationships. This doesn't always have to be family. It's not always possible for everyone to have a supportive family, but finding supportive relationships in friends, in your community, at your school is really important to keep our brain safe and stay away from unhealthy choices. Also, taking positive risks. Our brain really likes that stuff. Our brain likes to release dopamine. It likes to interact. So if you're taking a risk like doing sports or playing music or doing leadership, our brain gets excited and craves that, and we meet that need in a healthy way. Another thing is mental health. Mental health is absolutely important in both resilience, staying away from things that will harm us, but also recovering and being safe and happy when we are engaging in something that might not have been healthy before, right? Mental health can bring us back there. It's an ongoing process of building strength and compassion. So staying mentally strong will help us resist harmful peer pressure and make the healthiest choice for ourselves. But it also means we can show ourselves some grace and grace to ourselves, but also to people who are in recovery, that we can help them the same way that we might have needed help. So that is a quick overview of a couple things about our brain. Substances and how they affect the brain, how the brain works, and some protective factors in mental health about building that brain resilience. For the rest of the session, before our closing, we're going to jump into a panel discussion here. I am really excited to have a great group of panelists here. I would like to introduce Sierra Watson. Now, Sierra, oh, I just lost my little thing here. One moment. Okay. Sierra Watson. Okay, Sierra is currently applying for a master's degree in school psychology, building on her extensive background in educational leadership. As a former site director of English camps in Italy and Austria, as well as a registered behavioral technician within the States, her experience working directly with educators, families, and students has given her a deep passion using her skills to promote student well-being, advocate for equitable access to resources, and bridge the gap between learning and mental health. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Sierra. I'm excited to discuss more with you.
Well, thank you so much, Mitch, for that amazing introduction and also your comprehensive overview of the brain. I'm definitely going to be touching on some similar points today, and I'll probably go into more anecdotal topics on our Q&A. But hi, everyone. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about our brain. So our brain, what I've learned, is not here to make us feel good. I know, like, what? That's crazy. Our brain is here to protect us. So, what does that mean? Well, it means you experience a stressor. Your brain is going to take note of that. Why is it so hard to remember all the good things that happen in our life, but we can come up with every single bad thing? It's evolutionary. Our brain is made to protect us. So when we talk about substance use, we really have to talk about how we manage stressors in our life. As a human, we're going to deal with stressors throughout every developmental phase. We have stressors in our childhood, we have stressors in adolescence, we have stressors in young adulthood and beyond. So, when we talk about neuroplasticity, that literally and figuratively means you have the ability to change your mind. The grooves in your brain are literally a part of neural pathways. So when you're a child, you have so much neuroplasticity availability. And it also subsists further on, but a process happens around adolescence, what Mitch was talking about between 15 and 25, where the term called pruning happens. Now, that, if you think of a plant, and I love gardening, if you see a branch that's dying, you cut that off. And the other branches that are green or fruitful or thriving, then the plant knows to give all its energy to those branches. It's the same thing with our brain. That's why it's so important during our adolescence to take take seriously the habits that we develop, especially in response to stressors. So in my life, and I think in a lot of people's lives, substances come into our lives normally as, oh, this is a pastime, this is something that's fun. And when abuse starts to happen, it normally transfers from this is something that's fun to all of a sudden I'm stressed out, I'm going to go to this, I'm going to look towards this. So that's why it's important during this time from 15 to 25, our neuroplasticity starts going through a phase of pruning. So any neural pathway we developed, an example is I'm stressed out, I'm going to drink. Anything that's really strong, we're going to hold on to that. And anything that we've done once or twice, I went on a walk once because I was stressed, but I only did that like 2 times. Our literally our brain in a physical sense is going to discard that. So that's why it's so important that we start developing these healthy habits. What are some ways that we can develop healthy habits? Well, there's something else, another phenomenon called the gut brain connection. This is our gut is actually physically connected to our brain through the vagus nerve, which is it starts at the brain stem and it goes down your body, hormones, and your immune system. Your gut has control over trillions of microbes that literally create neurotransmitters. And that's what Mitch was talking about earlier, that serotonin, that dopamine, that GABA. So if we're eating hot Cheetos every day, or you know what, I'm going to in and out every day because that's something that I would do. Your gut gets inflamed and literally tells your brain to develop cortisol. That's that stress. That's that stressor. So when you create an environment within the body itself that doesn't, help you feel good, then that process is even harder. So we can always start with eating healthy, and it always sounds like, oh yeah, yeah, we know that, but I think we don't talk much about that gut brain connection. It's really, really powerful, the fact that your gut is directly connected to developing certain neurotransmitters. And lastly, I want to talk about our emotional psychological tactics. I myself, it is September and we talk about suicide and suicidal ideation. Um, I also have experience with that. And so, cognitive behavioral approaches, if you've heard of CBT, that's the cognitive behavioral therapy, that helps you reframe stressful situations. It helps you reframe the way you look at things. Optimism, self compassion. All of these things help in creating the ability to create emotional regulation and overall brain resilience. This is a great platform, you guys, and I'm so happy that you've asked me to speak on this. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm happy
Oh,
there's
of course.
a place where we can talk about ways to, not go towards substances, but build those healthy habits. So thank you for having me.
Of course, yeah, I'm so glad, and that's absolutely why we invited you to come be a panelist, because we really wanted to really have a deep dive on how our brain works and how that applies to prevention, how it applies to carrying ourselves through our lives. So I'm really glad to have you here and looking forward to discuss more with you throughout the presentation. So thank you so much for that. And oh yeah, I definitely love eating the hot Cheetos in the moment, but then 10 minutes later, oh no. I'd like to introduce now Eileen Parnami. Eileen is a middle school student and a youth advocacy leader passionate about creating positive change through STEM and community engagement. As a BRITE Youth representative, she has led initiatives in BRITE's summer advocacy program. She's also involved in tutoring, mentoring students with diverse needs, and serving as a role model. Eileen was recently crowned as Miss Teen Simi Valley 2025, where she represents youth voices and encourages others to lead with confidence and compassion. How are you, Eileen?
Thank you, Mitch. I'm feeling really great, and I'm so excited to be part of the panel for this teen brain resilience. So I would just like to say that, including for BRITE, I've been working with them to build a peer pressure awareness day. So to make sure that students and youth are making positive choices. And through these experiences, I've seen how important it is for students to understand that our brains are still developing. So we have to make sure that we don't be influenced by others negatively and be more capable of building healthy habits. And I also agree with Sierra with how she discussed about how our brain works. And from my experience of being a youth advocate in our school and our community, I have one-on-one experiences with actual youth facing the problems. So thank you.
That's absolutely why we want you here. And thank you so much, Eileen. You are so impressive, and we're really glad to have you as a Bright Youth representative. And congratulations on your recent crowning. And
Thank
that's
you.
absolutely what needs to happen, is that we need to start having more discussions with young people, the people whose brains are developing. They still have agency. They still have power and have voice. So our whole program is focused around raising up those youth voices.
Yes.
Now, I'd like
Thank
to,
you.
oh, of course. I'm so glad you're here. I'd like to introduce another panelist who actually also, as a youth, was a volunteer with BRITE, but now has gone on to do an amazing career where she is supporting young people and supporting the community. I'd like to invite Victoria Plasencia. Victoria is the Tri-Counties representative from Mothers Against Drunk Driving, also known as MAD. Victoria comes from a career background of violence prevention and now works with MAD at the intersection of public safety and public health, using education prevention, events, learning from youth, and utilizing community strengths. Also, Victoria loves playing softball, bicycling, embracing nature, traveling, practicing hot yoga, and spending quality time with family and friends. Really important things for our mental health. And thank you so much for being here, Vic.
Thank you so much for having me.
Vic, would you tell us a little bit about what has been going on with you at MAD? I know I attended an event recently where you did the Walk Like MAD, where we had a 5K walk, which was very cool. Are you able to share a little bit about what's been going on?
Absolutely, I'm happy to. So we have a little mixture of prevention and then also community events, community engagement, and some of those opportunities are actually right around the corner. If any attendees want to come in Santa Barbara, we're having one in October 25th. It's called Move with MAD. So it changed from Walk Like MAD to Move with MAD to make it more inclusive and accessible for any way people want to move their bodies. And our prevention education programs, we do local high schools throughout Santa Barbara County, San Luis Obispo County, and Ventura County, along with colleges and adult education for kind of like alcohol consumption awareness and what a 0.08 is, what alcohol poisoning is in high schools, what to do if someone's experiencing alcohol poisoning. We're also including cannabis, and we're seeing a lot of DUI crashes with substances other than alcohol. So cannabis including in that, and then also fentanyl, and then other drugs as well, including prescription medication too. So, yep, that's what we've been up to.
Thank you so much, Vic, and that is so valuable. And I've seen how you've engaged with the community too, and it's so important. So I'm really honored to have you here as a panelist. I'd like to introduce now our final panelist, Sade Champagne. Sade is a professional actress, speaker, singer, dancer, director, producer, radio host, and talk show host. She has been featured on TV, film, on stage, and has performed for over 100,000 people. Sade is active on her social media, creating short and long-form content. She's invited to speak and perform and mentor all across the United States, and in fact has even performed in the Dominican Republic. You can find her on Instagram at I'm Sade Champagne. September is also Suicide Prevention Month, so to honor that, Sade will be sharing a short presentation at the end of our webinar to talk about suicide prevention and resilience. How's it going, Sade?
It's going absolutely fantastic. I have been thoroughly enjoying this webinar and our time together and just receiving even more information. And it's great because no matter how much I'm always learning and continuing my education and the work that I do in the community, you can always learn more. And so hearing from you all, from starting with your presentation, Mitch, and also hearing from Eileen and Sierra as well, and then in Victoria, I work with MAD as well. And so it's been chef's kiss.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here. So now the Q&A is open. So if anyone would like to submit a Q&A question, that will go to our team and they'll be able to find a good one. But while you're doing that, I think we'll jump in with a couple of questions I had prepared for all of our panelists to answer if they're open to. And here is the first one. How currently are you keeping your brain healthy? How currently are you developing that brain resilience? For me, I have been reading a lot of audiobooks and trying to walk a lot more. It's something that's really important to me. I haven't always been super on the walking, but I'm trying to get back into it to walk every single day. For my amazing panelists, what's something that you're doing to keep your brain healthy?
For me, I would say one of them is taking more breaks from my phone throughout the day. And so whether if it's, when I'm eating and say, okay, I'm going to take a break. If I'm not literally, because I am one of those people, y'all, I love to watch something while I'm eating. It's something great. Like you love to watch it and you're eating, it's like the best thing. But if I'm not literally watching something on my phone, okay, let's put it to the side, let it charge. And so taking breaks from my phone. And then also, I love what Sierra talked about with cognitive behavioral therapy. I've been working on a lot of when a certain thought process might be coming up, especially going through a difficult time, I'll allow myself to take a sacred pause. And instead of just now entertaining that negative or hurtful thought, I'll take a sacred pause and instead I will reframe it. And so that's been super helpful as well. When I'll share more of my story later, I would go into much deeper negative, self-destructive thoughts. So that's been huge for me.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm so
so
glad that's been working out for you.
yeah, so I just had to I want to answer a question that I got from me. So one thing, as a middle schooler, some substances seem most popular among other peers, and in my school, it would probably be vapes because more people among middle schoolers use them, but not just because one person does and makes it spread over the school. And one idea I have for helping youth make healthier choices is probably coming down to awareness and support and giving clear informations about making positive habits and encouraging open conversations without judgment and promoting friendships and activities that make positive choices easier. And I know peer support really matters because usually peers listen to each other instead of going to adults.
Thank you so much for sharing, Eileen. And for reference for our panelists, you are able to see the Q&A questions come in too. So Eileen saw a question for her, which was, as a middle schooler, which substance seems most popular among your peers? And what ideas do you have for making healthy choices? So thank you so much for sharing that, Eileen. And then as we go through too, I'll kind of bring them up and ask them individually. So but that was really great and really profound to hear too, because it seems so disconnected sometimes that we don't always know what's going on with our middle schoolers and the people in our life. So being able to hear from you that there is something we need to focus on is really important.
Yeah, and I also would like to answer a different question that was given was as a middle school student, what do you wish adults better understood about being your age today? So I would answer that by saying I wish adults better understood how much pressure students face instead of just saying come to your counselor and share your thoughts. But they should also check how from school and social media and friendships how much pressure they're actually facing instead of just giving a typical message. And it's more just than just teenage drama. It's actually affecting mental health, like how you discussed over the webinar. And I want adults to really listen without judgment and taking time to understand our day-to-day experiences, which really make a big difference. And yeah.
Absolutely, and on that thread in the panel right now, we have panelists that work with youth too, and I kind of want to throw the same question that you got: is how do you see interacting with young people and supporting them for all of our panelists?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you so much, Eileen, for sharing your experience amongst your peers today. I'm a part of Gen Z. I'm a part of the older Gen Z, in which we, we're kind of guinea pigs. We didn't quite grow up on the internet, but pretty much. But this Gen Alpha, and teaching them, they're growing up on the internet, and so there's no breaks anymore. There's no breaks. You don't go to school and then come back home and, you know any issues you had at school with classmates stays at school, and you'll deal with it tomorrow. It's constant, and especially if it's also happening on your phone, and that's also another world that's always in your pocket. I definitely have seen a lot of substance use also normalized amongst groups, because um, of ways that it's presented like this is something fun and there's no harm to it. So thank you for sharing that, especially when it comes to vapes. It's marketed in a very aggressive way, where it does target a younger audience. Bubblegum flavored this, blueberry that. Those are flavors that are targeted to a specific group. So yeah, I would say seeing that normalization is something that I've noticed. It's in the conversation and lexicon of children, but not really. What do we do about this? How do we avoid it? What are some other healthier ways? So those are some things I've seen as well.
Yeah, and I also just wanted to add, like, how you talked about social media, how it's really constant. Some people more like pressure themselves in cyberbullying, because the person who's bullying you doesn't really get to like face like one-on-one, like have a conversation. So it can affect like the other person more than what they would in person.
I actually want to throw it over to Sade here, because Sade has a lot of her career through social media, not only engaging with young people, but also engaging with social media career. So do you have any thoughts on youth and social media, and how we can be the most protective?
Yes, well, I think one of the classes I love teaching youth on is about social media etiquette and social media safety. And I think what's so important, and this is even me being someone with my platforms continuing to grow, is to remember that the things that you share are going to stay with you. Do not have anything that you post that you would not, if there's anything you post that, God forbid, should your parents, your grandparents, people down the line are going to see, then that needs to be your cause for pause to think that's not something I automatically want to share. Also, I think it's important to consider having a private social media that you don't have to share with everyone. It needs to just be for your friends and for your families. You want to put up safeguards for yourself. And another note that I would share is to be reminded that majority of the things you see on social media are not real. They are not real. Oftentimes, we are stressing ourselves out. We're feeling depressed, discouraged. We're feeling not good enough off of fake things. And I know this as someone being in the entertainment industry, doing the work that I do. I'm shocked when I find out how many people could have one type of representation, and then you see literally like those things are not what you think that they are. So I think it's huge, because the way that social media started being, I'm a millennial. And so we've been, back when internet was first starting, and then obviously getting on social media, but I didn't start until after high school. Knowing what I know now, I would not be on there, to be honest with you, as a middle schooler, as a high schooler, unless if I could literally just have a private page for me and my close friends where we can share things that, and even if that's the case, we could just share that via text or when we see each other in person. And so that's something that I would consider. I do want to answer a question, Mitch, that was posted when people asked about a healthy gut, and they were saying how that can contribute to our mental health as well. And you mentioned one of the things, walking. So getting in some action and some movement. A lot of times we keep a lot of stress in our bodies, and we are, if you're in school, if you work, a lot of people are very sedentary or not being able to move. So getting outside for a walk, if you're able to, is really powerful. You see me taking sips. I drink a lot of water. So I would say when it comes to having a healthy gut, and wanting to just have better health overall, start with smaller things and don't get so overwhelmed thinking, oh my gosh, I have to go and buy this protein powder or this supplement, or I have to spend all this money on food. Start with where you are with tiny things. And that's very powerful for your mental health and for your brain development as well.
Well, thank you so much, Sade. And if anyone wants to jump onto that, please feel free. But I also wanted to pull it over to Vic. And a question that was asked in the chat was around her work with MAD. So our mental health is really, really important, and there's so many facets of our life. In working with MAD, that was more focused on prevention and alcohol. What are some things that you're seeing that are risks for young people?
Yeah, that's a really good question. What we've been seeing is a downplay with e-bikes and them not kind of realizing how important it is to stay safe on e-bikes, like as if it is a real vehicle. Because it is a vehicle. And then also like hitting their pen while they're also e-biking, because technically that is still operating a vehicle while under the influence of something. And
That'd be
we
a weed
have
pen, right? Marijuana?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, pen with cannabis inside of it. And also some patterns we're wanting to be aware of too is um, a lot of times their parents or their older siblings will be providing them alcohol. And we see this often on the Central Coast when there's really fun outdoor events to go to, and then they'll be drinking inside of their vehicle with alcohol provided from their families or older friends or older siblings. And that's what's been happening as well. And then some of the other, I'm trying to think what else. I feel like boundary setting is one of the protective factors that I feel is coming in really critical because they're able to say no and able to know that they should respect their boundaries around that. So even though there's like a lot of these risks happening, it doesn't mean that we're losing hope. And there's a lot of anecdotes that we can learn from the youth of how they're setting their boundaries. So that's really helpful to know. So yeah, that's kind of the patterns that we've been seeing of the high risk areas for youth.
It really is amazing seeing youth advocates and youth that are able to say no and say, this is a healthy choice I want to make for myself. And it's been really cool seeing that with a lot of our youth advocates, but also specifically with Eileen and her project on peer pressure is that's a big thing. Peer pressure to do something that might be unhealthy and being able to set a boundary for yourself, like you talked about, Vic. That could be the front line between a healthy choice and not a healthy one. Moving along here, I want to talk a little bit more about the brain, and I'd love to hear from Sierra on this as well, but from any of our panelists on how you feel about your brain's development. Being a teenager, being an adolescent, now being an adult, did you feel a change? What is something you might say to someone who's still in that brain development period? How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I specifically remember turning 25. It was last year, but I think in general our societal literacy on mental health is in an upward trajectory. So I'm going to kind of just combine an anonymous question, which was how do I see schools balancing academics and mental health support? I think we're in an upward trajectory because in general we're all starting to talk about mental health a little bit more. So now we're having more people passionate about approaching that and how important that is for preteens, teens. For me, now that knowing what I know now, I wish I could have practiced way more self care, way more patience with myself. There was no, there was no pause button. Once your prefrontal cortex develops and you have a little bit more control over your executive functioning, you can tell yourself, okay, wait, stop. We're not gonna even entertain this thought. Like Sade was saying earlier, you take a sacred pause. I love that. I feel like as you mature, that's when you gain a little bit more control. And there's a self awareness that I think always stays. That's like a motif. It's throughout all stages. And I think that self awareness sometimes is explained by the soul, which could be theoretical or anything. But that ability to actually take control of your thoughts, that's one of the biggest differences that I see from my own teenage years to now. Yeah.
I absolutely echo you there. I also felt a shift in my ability to feel like I had control over my life and control over myself. And I was recently diagnosed and found out that I am living with ADHD. And that was a big thing. That was a big thing for me to realize, oh, a lot of these things that I've been feeling aren't because something is wrong with me. It's just because my brain is working in this certain way. And as I've become an adult, same to you, I found out, oh, this is how I can take control of my life. This is how I can feel good. This is how I can recover. So I really love what you shared there. And if any of our other panelists too, how you're feeling about your own brain development and your own skills to have a healthy life.
Yeah. Oh,
Go
sorry. You
ahead.
can go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yes, I'd like to combine it with the question that was asked too about how we can best support teens and also in helping them to resist substances and going along with what the question that you asked, Mitch. So first, I would say that I notice, and I think, they always talk about as you get older, you're settling more into who you are, and I do believe that to be true, but also I've been working to really help teens and young people realize you can start receiving that sooner. It doesn't have to wait until we are older. When people are exposed to other ways of living and other ways of being, they're able to know that it's possible. They know that, oh, this can be a choice for me. But if it's never presented as an option or a choice, and actually be able to tangibly see it, which is why representation is so huge, it makes it hard for someone to see that I could have this experience as well. And so for me, I noticed one of the biggest changes in what I work a lot with teen and youth in is helping them to live more inwardly instead of externally. I lived so much of my life when I was younger wanting other people to like me and being consumed with other people's thoughts and opinions of me. And that's been a huge difference. And what I noticed in my life is realizing it's more about what I think and how do I believe and want to see my life instead of trying to win the approval of many people that I don't even know to this day. I'm not in contact with these people. And then as far as the answering the question with how to best support teens, and helping them to resist substances, I would say as adults, we have to start by being the example. We have to be the example that we want to see. Kids don't just listen to what is said, they watch what we do, and they see the way we treat ourselves and the way we treat others. And so we can tell them one thing and how they should do. But if we're also like, oftentimes when I see kids who are being bullied or who are also, exhibiting bullying behavior, their parents act so surprised. And then I see the parents and I'm like, he's sorry to tell you, mom and dad, but this bullying is coming from somewhere. And so I would just say, I would gently encourage parents and adults that we want to be the example and the change that we want to see. And so knowing that kids and teens pay attention to us, if they see that we are people who are more patient, if they see that we have other ways of managing our stress and working through challenges and difficulties, it helps them to realize they can have the tools too. And so that's the first thing I would say. And then as Eileen was talking about, having more understanding and support towards them and being less judgmental, like realizing the pressure that they're under.
Yeah, I just wanted to add about this question, how we can help teens delay or resist substances. We could tell them, be in a be with peers that you don't have to try to fit in, but they're happy to accept you like however you are. You just have to be yourself instead of acting like someone else. Like Sade said about being into groups where they don't even, like, to this day she doesn't even have contact with them. Don't try to like be like someone else just because they are making you do it. Always say no instead of saying yes if you don't feel comfortable to.
That is so important. Thank you both, Eileen and Sade, for sharing that. It takes a group. It takes a group. It takes a whole village to keep our children safe, and that they are our future, and that making choices that both uplift them so that they can share their voices, but also choices that are going to help make sure they stay safe is really, really important. And if anyone else on our panel wanted to offer to and talk about ways to keep our young people safe and resistant to substances, but also about themselves and the ways that they are able to resist unhealthy choices, that would be really wonderful to hear.
I would love to just quickly add, I love what Sade and Eileen said. And a really big part that I do for myself, as well as what I would suggest for teens, get involved, get in a sport, be a part of a club, do something to where a substance looks like a barrier, and it looks like, oh, that actually doesn't help me run fast, or oh, I gotta sing tomorrow, that's gonna scratch up my voice, or oh, you want to do something to where the substance can show itself with no facade. There's no other way to look at this. This is a roadblock with what I want to do. So I would say definitely get involved.
Thank you so much, Sierra. And we're getting pretty close to the end of the webinar here. Oh my goodness, that is amazing. It has totally flown by. I could just keep talking and talking. Was there any of our panelists that had something that they wanted to share or something that didn't get answered that you'd like to talk about before we transition to our last presentation and the closing?
I realized there was a question that I did not get to regarding biggest thing you've learned through your work at MAD and something that surprised you the most. I think people's resilience. A lot of times we work with families who are bereaved from loved ones unfortunately passing away in a DUI crash, and the way that they just want to help prevent another family from experiencing something as devastating as that, and the way they just jump right in and so proactive while just like their whole world is crashing down from something that is so unexpected, and everyone assumes we get from point A to point B close, like safely, um, all in one piece. So I think the resilience is the thing that's been most surprising to learn, and also just very honored to work with these families and to see and witness their resilience has been really inspiring, and something that has surprised me most from working with MAD. So that was the question I did not answer. So I just wanted to make sure to give that an answer.
Thank you so much, Vic. And I want to say thank you to all of our panelists. If we could bring them all up on screen here, that'd be really wonderful to see all of our amazing panelists that came to join our webinar. This is our first webinar that we've done in a number of years. So I really appreciate each and every one of you sharing your insights and being here. So round of applause for yourselves and at home for our amazing panelists. Thank you, thank you, thank you so, so much. And of course, y'all are welcome to stay for Sade's message she would like to share. And if you need to go, that's okay. But I'd love to close it out here with all of us. So thank you all so very much.
Yes, thank you. I'd love to share for a few minutes with this month being Suicide Prevention Month. Although I say every month of the year is Suicide Prevention Month. And so I thank you so much to Mitch for having me. Thank you to everyone at BRITE Youth and everyone who is here on our panel and all of our attendees. And so, what's interesting is when I have Mitch share my bio, a short portion of my bio, what's really powerful about that is it's not for me to be able to brag about all that I can do, but it's actually a testimonial to my life, because I always think to myself, I'm so thankful that I hung in there. I am so thankful that I hung in there, because I am now walking in my brighter tomorrow. I could have only dreamed of living the life that I live today. The little girl in me could have only dreamed of living and experiencing the life that I do today, to where even my hardest moments and my worst days are still better than my best days in the past. And I am so thankful that I hung in there, that my story could have been cut short. It could have been drastically different. Even growing up, I had experienced a lot of hardship, and I come from a lot of complex traumas in my childhood. I made a decision from a very young age that I wanted to be sober. And I knew it from a young age with seeing in my family environment around me and the neighborhoods and schools that I grew up in. And I still say to this day, at just turning 38 this year, it is one of the best decisions that I've ever made in my life. And I never have a day where I regret being sober. I never have a day where I say, man, I'm really missing out on something. And I don't judge other people, and it's not something that I go and dote on, but it's just to share with people so they can see, like, wow, there is another choice that I could be able to have in a life that I can experience, especially being someone who was predisposed to alcoholism, to drug and alcohol abuse because of my family environment. When it comes to our stories, I want to encourage anyone who's listening, and for your families as well, that your life is worth living. Your life is worth living. There are people who care about you. There are people who love you. We oftentimes will think to ourselves, that especially as youth, but of any age, but especially with youth, and going back to my younger self, you think that where you are is all that your life is going to be. But there's more life that's in store. This is why it's important for us to be exposed to other opportunities and ways of being and living. If I had only believed and seen where my environment was, and many people that I grew up with that say, well, you're going to be just like us. Our parents are in prison too. We are impoverished. We grew up in this type of environment. But from a young age, I started reading. I was watch people who looked like me, who were doing what I wanted to do. And I could see like, wow, this is possible for me. It's important too, when it comes to, and Sierra talked about this, we want to have things that we're passionate about. You want to have, areas in your life where you're able to find things that you enjoy doing, that you're able to see like, I have these gifts, I have these talents. A lot of times when we're hearing those thoughts, we never think to ourselves, everyone has experienced those same thoughts. Everyone has experienced that. It's not your own thoughts. It's lies. It's discouragement. It's not the truth of who you really are. And what's great is the way the brain and the human being was created is that we can always shift. We can always transform and grow. You're not doomed to think a certain way. I don't have those same thoughts anymore. I don't have those same idealizations anymore. And I've been able to find a greater reason to be able to live and keep going. If you have a loved one who's suffering and going through a difficult time, I want to encourage all of us to be patient with our loved ones, to be patient with them, and to remind them of how powerful their life is, to remind them of the great things that they have done and who they are to us. That's been huge as well when it comes to mental health advocacy, suicide prevention, is celebrating our little wins and allowing our loved ones to be there for us. I used to struggle a lot with isolating. And I don't know how many of you know this, but nothing good comes out of us isolating ourselves. Those lies begin to get louder. And we begin to think that those things are true, but it's not. And so I encourage us to be patient with our loved ones that are suffering, and to allow ourselves to, even if you may not be experiencing it yourself, know that it's not that something that someone can just turn off really quick. Why can't they just get it together? But I want to encourage you to make sure that you are actually, being patient with them, pouring into them the way that you can. And of course, starting with pouring into yourself. And so I'm really thankful to be here. I'm thankful to Mitch for this opportunity, and just reminding us all that Suicide Prevention Month is every month. And we can continue to be of great support to not only ourselves, but to others too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sade. And you are an absolute light in this world. And I'm always so impressed with you and so happy every time we get to work together. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. And I know that the world is better, and that we're all better for having had you still here and be able to continue being that light that you are. So
Thank
you. So
you.
much. All right, we are right here at 7 o'clock. Thank you so much to everyone who attended and to our amazing panelists. And I wanted to give a thank you to everyone in the room right now, Miles Reitz, Jace Meadows, and Megan White, for being the behind-the-scenes producers, and the whole BRITE team for being here. It's really great to start doing this again. So I hope this is the start of a lot of great things that we can put out for the community. Here are some links for you. BriteYouth.org is where you can find the rest of our stuff. And brite.link/connections is where you can find a link to the recording of this webinar and our previous webinars, as well as information about upcoming webinars. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you, Mitch. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.